Hi, this is a video of doing an 84 volt upgrade to my ZAP truck. Here's a pile of scrap iron here. That used to be the battery box for the 6th battery. And what I did was I chopped all that out. Over here you can see where the 6th battery box used to be. It used to be centered right here on top of these two crossbars. I had a welder come over. I found him on Craigslist. He brought a whole bunch of saws and grinders and stuff, and we ground away and removed that material that you saw in that pile so that we could have the beginnings of a battery tray right here. Then I went to Home Depot and got some angle iron, and we end welded the angle iron extensions all the way to the frame, as you see here, on both ends. So what we have now, where there used to be a tray for a single battery, now I've got a tray for 2 batteries. So this will be the battery box that's going to allow me to have 2 batteries for these sideways here, in addition to the original 5 batteries forward right here. Now what I had to do to make room here, the Delta Q charger used to be up like this, and it basically went from here to here, flat. So we cut away the support braces for this platform that the Delta Q mounts onto, and we simply welded that on here to this vertical support. I also had to trim the plate that used to come up about this far, so we trimmed that off to make it just a square plate. So as you can see, now I have room for 7 batteries, which makes the 84 volt upgrade. The main fuse used to be mounted here. That also was in the way of where this battery will go, so I took that fuse off, and it happens to bolt onto here. I'll drill another hole so I can screw it down to that existing threaded nut plate there and attach it that way. Even though it's raised above this cross member here, there's still about a 1/4 inch clearance when you close the bed. Now the upgrade I'm doing keeps the original 72 volt charger as is, but I need to add another charger called the guest charger that will separately charge the 7th battery, and that's this right here. And what I did was I welded on a couple of crossbars onto this support for the spare tire. So I'll drill 4 holes into these crossbars that will allow the guest charger to be bolted in like that. Some other changes I've made, subtle changes. I have motor shields on. That protects the motor vent holes from getting pebbles and sand inside of the motor. Also, I added, from a motorcycle shop, I got this foam sock filter, and I screwed that onto the input for the cooling fan that blows air into the main drive motor to keep it from overheating. Without this sock, this motor could suck up dust and sand and pump that into the motor, so the sock will prevent that. And finally, you notice these ropes here. I added these because the bed used to open almost completely vertical, and that did 2 things. One thing, it made it hard to close again. You'd have to stand on the tire here and lean and pull it on down. Now it's partially closed, so it's a little bit easier to do that. Secondly, when it's in the open position, there's an awful lot of force on these gas springs. These gas springs used to be what prevented the bed from tipping all the way back. But there was a lot of force on these, and I could just see this joint here failing. So now the rope takes a load, and it's under quite a bit of tension. Imagine what these used to be under, and they're further along on the pivot point, so it would be even tougher on them in that position. And since I've got the solar option on this vehicle, there's an additional, it's probably about 100 pounds of more weight on here that was putting a lot of force on these gas struts. So these ropes make for, I think, a very important improvement. So that's about it. So again, took the Delta Q charger that used to be mounted flat, chopped its supports off, welded it on vertically. I'll be able to read the status LEDs through the spare tire well. But I won't need to do that because I'm going to add a AC amp transformer, the sense, that will go into the cab, and I'll have a dashboard mounted indicator of the AC amps going into actually both battery chargers, because they'll both be connected onto this one line. I also have a cycle analyst meter. I'm going to cut a hole here in the dash and then bolt on a plastic bezel, and I'll mount the cycle analyst computer there, the AC amp meter there. I'm going to mount a DC amp meter here that will monitor the output from the solar panel. I have the pack tracker module with the large display, and that will sit up here. And finally, on top of the dashboard, in view of the steering wheel, I'm going to mount a DC 300 amp analog meter for real-time feedback of how much of a load I'm placing on the system. Up here is a little solar panel I got off of eBay. This charges up the auxiliary battery. This is actually a Volkswagen accessory. There's a bunch of them on there if you look for them. They're normally quite expensive, but on eBay you can get them really cheap. For the 7th battery, I got a Trojan 1275 flooded acid battery. I got that instead of the AGM type of battery for a couple reasons. One, it was a lot cheaper. It was less than half the price. But secondly, the charging, the guest charger, that's better suited to charging a flooded type lead acid battery as opposed to the AGM. Record. Okay, so all 7 batteries have been installed. The 7th battery isn't connected yet, so temporarily it's still hooked up to the 72 volt system. And when I get the right cabling, then I'll add the 7th battery and then wire the guest charger and so on and so forth onto the main AC coming in for the charging. So the job is done, except I have to connect the battery chargers to the AC coming in and wire the DC output from the guest charger on over to the Trojan, and then move all this over and make it an 84 volt system. But physically this is how it looks. A nice symmetrical battery arrangement, a relocated Delta Q charger. You can see how nicely it fits vertically as opposed to it used to sit flat.